What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Lombardi Line presented by DraftKings. We're coming to you from coast to coast as always. Michael Lombardi out at his office in Jersey. I'm Stormy Bonantoni live from downtown Las Vegas, Circa Resort and Casino. We got lots of NBA postseason talk to get to today. The countdown to the NFL draft continues, and some interesting NFL news just in general to get to off the top of the program here today as well, Michael. But first and foremost, hello, good morning. How are we doing today?
We're great. Congratulations. You didn't take the bait. You didn't think something was fishy, that maybe the Lakers weren't going to play, and it got close until Zion got hurt. You know, I thought he was going to kind of lead him to a victory, but then with the hamstring, I thought he had a stomach pull because he reached for his stomach, I thought, on that shot he made. But congratulations to you on a bet well done.
Every now and then, Michael, we don't crash and burn, but a good win there. It'll be fun to see.
More now than then, Stormy. More now than then. Don't be modest. Come on now. You're on a roll. You've been on a roll for a while here now. You know that.
Appreciate you, my friend. We have had a good couple of weeks. We'll see if we can keep that roll going. And as Michael mentioned, of course, the Lakers now getting set to face the Denver Nuggets in a best of 7 coming up in the first round. But we'll talk NBA a little bit later, because we want to start off things, Michael, with a very interesting ESPN article that dropped involving somebody you know very well in Mr. Bill Belichick, hence why you're quoted in the article a number of times. And before we get your thoughts, let me lay out some of the bullet points for our audience who may not have read it just yet, because it is pretty long, written by Don Vannatta, Seth Wickersham, and Jeremy Fowler. Big picture, that Belichick thought he had the job in Atlanta, was blindsided when the team went another direction, announcing Raheem Morris. A source alleged that the Patriots owner Robert Kraft called Arthur Blank, the owner in Atlanta, twice on the phone, warning him not to trust Bill, which was a big part of the Falcons passing on him. The Patriots do deny that conversation took place during the vetting of the process, saying Kraft advocated for Bill to get the job. But the spokesman for Kraft, Stacey James, also, when asked if Kraft ever criticized Bill in conversations with Blank, said Kraft has no recollection of that, but may have done so prior to January. So the growing bad blood that we've known for a while, getting some more pub this week. Michael, what did you make overall of the article and what came out?
Well, I mean, obviously, I got a phone call from Seth who asked me a couple questions, which I was on the record, and everything I said was on the record. A lot of people were off the record in the column. But to me, I think there's two factors here in this decision. I think that clearly from the start, Rich McKay, who is the trustee of the Arthur Blank estate, really wanted no one to come into the organization that was going to upset the structure that they had, even though Belichick was and his people were told prior to the conversation of the interview that Rich wasn't going to be involved. But this was truly a Machiavellian opportunity for them to systematically make sure that Arthur Blank, who wanted to hire Bill, was outvoted. And I think as you read through the article, I think it frankly makes Atlanta look a little bit, not a little bit, a lot like, what are they thinking, right? I mean, when they sit there and quoted as saying he wasn't in our top 3 coaches, when your general manager has won 21 games in the 3 years that he's been there, your assistant general manager presided over the drafting of Justin Fields and Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago and got fired. Like, are you really the ones who should be judging the greatest coach of all time? It's somewhat strange. And then to be boisterous about it, to stick your neck out and say, this is what we thought? Come on now. And Chris Olsen, who's clearly was the guy they're referring to in terms of he didn't want to change their contractual structure to bring more players in to work out in the offseason. I mean, this is just typical what the NFL is. And my phone lit up this morning early, so I knew the column was out. And a lot of people's reaction is that's why Atlanta never wins. I mean, they're behaving and acting and being quoted as if they won 5 Super Bowls, and they're treating a coach who has 8 Super Bowl rings as if he's lost it. Why don't they ask Matt Rule if he's lost it? If you have a phone conversation with the man, you actually think you're smarter than him? And at the end of the day, Stormy, for me, like, really, Fontenot and Pace are going to judge Belichick? I mean, that's how you're going to handle this? Like, that's really should have been in the article. I mean, this was clearly Rich McKay wanted Raheem Morris from the start. Rich McKay's son will eventually come work for the Falcons. This was all done internally, and it was planned. And once they got Blank convinced it wasn't the right thing to do, off to the races they went.
Well, and it's funny, too, when you talk about the Falcons and winning. Who'd they lose their most recent Super Bowl to again? Okay, yeah, let's just make sure that we throw that into the conversation as well, Michael. But you said it. Bill didn't even, according to the article, finish in anyone's top 3 when Blank and his, quote, top lieutenants voted on the team's next coach, ranking each of the candidates. They were even quotes of saying he was essentially voted off of the island. And what I liked about what your perspective was when they put your quotes into it, because again, there were a lot of unnamed sources in this one. So I like that you were putting your name out in front of it. You said where Belichick's not getting fair enough evaluation is if you have a good way of doing something, he's one of the best all-time listeners. He's open to change. It just has to be smart change. And Bill repeatedly, according to the article and things that we had heard throughout that hiring process in Atlanta, was talking to Blank about how he was willing to work with Terry Fontenot. He was even willing to work with Rich McKay. He was willing to give up a lot of the personnel and decision-making things and other roles that he had previously held in New England because he just wanted to be a coach.
Yeah, and yet, they think the game has passed them by. I mean, it's really kind of comical. It really is kind of comical. That you think they've won 3 Super Bowls in their 3 years down there in Atlanta with 21 wins. I mean, and everything is Arthur Smith's fault, right? So it's just typical of the NFL. It just shows you that if I'm a fan of the Falcons and I'm reading this article, whether I like Belichick or not, the lack of respect shown to him, and obviously the article goes deep into the Kraft conversation about not trusting him. That's the one that has me completely baffled. I don't know what has occurred within that building for Kraft to have not trusted Bill, which is allegedly he told Arthur Blank. I find that hard to believe when he delivered 6 Super Bowls, when he increases the value of your franchise tremendously. I have a hard time understanding that. But look, this is the NFL. Everybody wants to get credit for success, and they want to tear down the people most responsible for that success. And I think this is just going on. It's almost a Shakespearean play, where it just everybody becomes a tragic figure within it, and they attack. And I think it's ultimately a wonderful feeling that the former players of the Patriots are the one coming to the defense of Belichick. I was going to be on the record in the column because I have nothing to hide. I watch the man work. I talk to the man. The man knows football more than anybody. I promise you, more than anybody within that organization. They're intimidated by him. He's not outdated. The fact that Terry Fontenot and Ryan Pace are judging him, I find that really hard to believe. But that's the NFL. Mm-hmm. That is why some teams win and some teams don't. That's why Bill Walsh told me in 1984, we're only competing against 8 teams here.
If that warning from Kraft to Arthur Blank was true, between that and everything with the Dynasty documentary that had come out, and it just feels like the negativity that Kraft has is pretty remarkable and a little bit insane, as you pointed out,
Petty.
given the success that they had together. But you know what, Michael, on to better things, and we'll revisit this article again a little bit later on in the show. But the LA Chargers posted a video yesterday that, just their new head coach, Jim Harbaugh, seems to be living his best life, so much so that it even inspired your new article this week. But our guy producer, Elliot Bowman, put together a couple of the best of clips from the video. So let's hear that, and then we'll talk a little more.
Are you guys part of the team or what?
Yeah, I am. We all are. Yeah, and I'm coaching for them.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. We're in Huntington Beach at the Waterfront RV Park. This is my Quantum Thor motor coach. Kind of inspired by growing up watching the Rockford Files. Got my DVDs, I've been watch that. Nothing will make you feel more like a dad than when you figure out how to dispose of the waste. RV, I can speak. This has been a help to winning, to working, and
no question. Winning in football, is there anything like it?
It's cured more ills than penicillin.
I've watched this 3 times, and it just gets better every time, Michael.
It's so good. Look, as I've known this man for a long time, and I think when and I've known his love affair as I've had for the Rockford Files, and, as a student at Hofstra University, the Rockford Files would come on late at night, and, I watched every one, and I know everyone, and I know Jim Rockford was the best. That Camaro that he drove, the house in Malibu, where there's still a plaque there, Stormy. If you ever go out to Malibu and you go to where his trailer was parked, there's still a plaque there honoring James Garner, who was a huge, huge Raider fan, by the way. So, he's living his best life. But what I tried to write about today was that Harbaugh's been inspired by the character Jim Rockford and James Gardner, but other people in his life too. And he spent his whole life being a head coach. Think about this. He has only been an assistant coach 2 years of his coaching career. He was with us at the Raiders as an assistant quarterback coach. That was 2 years. Never called plays, never did that. Then he went to the University of San Diego to become a head coach. And since that day, he's been a head coach ever since. And his strength and the secret sauce that makes Harbaugh so effective is his ability to take his personality, his competitive spirit, his will to win, and manifest it into the team. And the team becomes a bunch of little Jim Harbaughs who are the most competitive people on planet Earth. And that competitiveness, to me, is what's going to drive this team above the 8.5 win total. Because we've spent the last year talking about the Chargers as underachievers. They got all this talent, but they can't win. Well, what they didn't have was toughness. Mm-hmm. They didn't have that mental fortitude they need to win close games. They've lost way too many of them. I think ultimately now this hire will, and at 8.5, I like the over here a lot, and that's what I wrote about before the draft because he's going to make a difference.
Everywhere he has gone, that team has exceeded expectations. Yes, you mentioned that win total sitting 8.5 in the AFC West. They are the second shot behind the odds-on favorite Kansas City Chiefs at plus 300. And you speak about a bunch of little Harbaughs. Why do you think J.J. McCarthy and his former Michigan players are getting the love toward the draft that they are? We will be right back. We're just getting started here. Great day of the Lombardi Line ahead.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We call it the off season, but in the NFL on days like today, it feels far from off. Boy, this league is 24/7, 365 as we welcome you back to the Lombardi Line presented by DraftKings. Michael Lombardi, Stormy Buonantony with you. And as we continue hitting some of the big stories in the National Football League today, very grateful to have Albert Breer join us here on the Progressive Guest Line, senior NFL reporter, lead content strategist for the MMQB. You can also catch him on NBC Sports Boston. So very dialed in when it comes to what's going on with this Patriots and Belichick and Kraft situation, the job with the Falcons. Like, how have you unpacked the report that came out today?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's sort of a sad commentary on the league that, you had 7 openings, obviously excluding the New England one, that were out there, the greatest coach of all time. He wants a job and he can't get one. And look, like I say that with the acknowledgement that not every job was going to be set up for him. I think it's similar to Brady 4 years ago, where Brady was always going to have a narrower group of teams because you have to check a lot of boxes to be in the running for him. Same thing with Bill. You need to be in a position to win now. Geographically, it has to make sense for him. It has to make sense for the staff he wants to bring. All of that makes sense. But with a guy at that level out there, the idea that he wasn't able to get a job, I always thought was kind of more of a reflection on the state of ownership in the NFL and where owners are. And, I think more than anything else, it speaks to what owners value right now. And, I think, more often than not, you're seeing owners who, study this stuff in other sports and want to carry things over and have their own ideas. And they're valuing the structure of their organizations over individual people. Even when there's an opportunity to get somebody truly great into your organization and build around him. And I certainly think that was the case here. I think that there's concern with some people that he's going to come in and walk all over everybody, whether or not that's, reality or not. There is that perception out there. I think that concerns some owners. And so I think a lot of the same things are at work here, as were with, maybe Jim Harbaugh not getting a job for a couple of years. And it certainly were with Mike Vrabel being on the sidelines this year as well.
Albert, can you explain why through the Dynasty documentary, the Dynasty infomercial and the quotes that are attributed in this article to Kraft, the animosity towards somebody who won 6 Super Bowls for their franchise, went to 8, and obviously increase the value of their franchise. Can you explain or get your hands around any of this?
I think, I think he just really wants to get in the Hall of Fame, and I think that there's an element of legacy shopping going on, Michael. I think this is based on the book by Jeff Benedict, and that was, more or less a Kraft biography. So if you read the book, you sort of knew what to expect here, that it would be really the dynasty through the eyes of the guy in charge. And I do think that there's a little insecurity there, and concern that when Tom left and won a Super Bowl somewhere else, well, now that leaves two people, and when you're reaching for credit, it's clear that Tom's legacy is secure, and the fact that he went and won a championship somewhere else, so we've seen proof of concept there in another place, and Bill were to go somewhere else, say Atlanta, and win big there, well, what does that leave, for the guy who owns the team? And so, I do think that, at 82 years old, there's a desire to write your own legacy here and to make sure that your legacy is secure. And Robert Kraft's a great owner. Michael, you worked for him, that. But I do think, it's one of those things where, a guy is looking to really make sure that the history views him in the way that he wants to be seen. And, it can be tricky with owners, and if you look over the course of history, what does everybody remember Eddie DeBartolo for? They don't remember him for the 4 championships or 5 championships so much as they remember him for how it ended, with the riverboat thing in Louisiana. How does everybody look at Jerry Jones now? Do they remember him for the 3 championships, or do they remember him for walking away from Jimmy Johnson? I'd say it's the latter, So the legacy of an owner can be very, very difficult. I think Robert Kraft probably recognizes that as being overly aggressive and trying to make sure, history again sees him the way he wants to be seen.
Michael, I'll let you reflect on that.
Well, I think to me, and I've said this many times, Robert Kraft belongs in the Hall of Fame for hiring Belichick. Eddie DeBartolo got in the Hall of Fame for hiring Bill Walsh and building his organization into an incredible culture. But I think when you're overtly trying to get in the Hall of Fame, when you're publishing books that are autobiography that you've commissioned and you're doing an infomercial, then all of a sudden you're trying to get credit when you should just sit back and accept the credit for making a great decision, a bold decision. Because the back page of the New York Post the day that he hired Belichick was by Ian O'Connor, this was going to be a disaster. And yet it proved to win 6 Super Bowls and go to 8 titles. So that's really all you need to say. Now, if you want to get credit for the minutia of what actually transpired through the organization, that's something I never witnessed. So I think, to me, anytime you try to overtly pat yourself on the back with a long arm, it makes you look shallow. It makes you look insecure. And I think DeBartolo just stood behind it and allowed his decision to speak for itself, which is what I don't think Kraft's doing.
And I think that's hard. And Stormy, I just to piggyback on what Michael's saying, I'd agree. I think his resume is good enough to get in the Hall of Fame based on what he's done in setting up the organization, hiring Bill, in contributing to the league the way that he's contributed from a broadcast perspective and all of that. This just sort of comes across as insecurity to me, in that I don't think people react well to these sorts of things where they feel like you're overtly going and looking for credit. And look, like that contributor category is tough because you're dealing with some, I'd say it's like a little bit more vague than with, the player category. And so do you put him in now over a guy like Mike Shanahan, who half the league is running his offense? He won 2 Super Bowls. I don't know, but, if you're dealing with a category where things are a little vague, you can certainly see where a voter might be turned off by something like this and winds up going the other way on him.
Yeah, that insecurity and animosity with somebody that you had so much success with certainly feels a little bit odd. Albert Breer, MMQB, joining us here on the Lombardi Line on the Progressive Guest Line. You wrote a lot this week about the state of the Washington Commanders, and they today are hosting a whole bunch of quarterbacks, the 4 big ones outside of Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Michael Penix Jr. What should we, from the outside looking in, take away from that process?
Well, this is the way Adam Peters learned to do it in San Francisco. This is the way that they've done it there for years, where they bring in large groups of people. I think the Niners might actually be doing that today, doing the same thing today to much less fanfare, of course. The number I had heard was 22 of the 30 visitors are coming in today. I think it's an efficient way to use your time as they see it. They obviously are trying to set up a new program, and they're through their off-season program with Dan Quinn leading that. They're in draft meetings, and obviously this is a very, very important draft for them. I also think, and I defer to Michael on this one, but I think it does allow you to see the four quarterbacks in a more natural environment and how they interact with their peers. Maybe one of them or two of them take a leadership role in some of the things that are going on. You get to see them in a little bit of a competitive environment with some stress on them. I think from that perspective, it makes sense. Now, what you lose, I think, is the individual time. But I know the Commanders feel like through, the combine, pro days, private workouts, the Zoom calls they're allowed to do, they've had a lot of one-on-one time with Jaden Daniels and J.J. McCarthy and Drake May and Michael Penix. And they did have some individual time with those guys this morning where they could cross some T's and dot some I's. And getting to do it at the end of the process, too, I think is an important piece of it, too. Today's the last day that you're allowed to have guys in on 30 visits. So, ostensibly, that would allow for you to have the most information when you're getting the last chance to see those guys face-to-face.
Real quickly, Albert, I agree. It is the best way to do it. Real quickly, though, 4 quarterbacks or 5 in the first round, in your opinion?
So I don't think Bo Nix goes in the first round. I think Michael Penix's stock is a little volatile. I hate the term. I hate the term rising up draft boards. I think it's normally a load of crap. I think it's just all of us on the outside, the media, as we gather information and talk to more people, catching up to what the league thinks about people. But I do think to some degree it might exist a little bit with Michael Penix. The sense I get, Michael, is that the coaches like Michael Penix a little more than the scouts do. And there are reasons for that. I think part of it is that he's really good in areas you can't coach. And coaches feel like you can kind of fill in the blanks with the rest. Great deep ball accuracy, anticipates. You see some things that you really like that maybe are a little more intuitive. Coaches feel like they can work with the rest. So I could see him going 13 to the Raiders. I could see him going 16 to the Seahawks. I could see him maybe going somewhere in the second round if he doesn't wind up in one of those two places. So I think his stock is a little volatile. I think there is a possibility he goes in the top half of the first round. I think there's also a possibility he slides to the top of the second.
Albert, you're awesome. Thank you so much for the time today.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Bonatoni, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
For a limited time, we're offering 2 weeks of our exclusive betting splits here at VSiN for free. All you need to do is sign up at VSiN.com/splits. The VSiN betting splits page is updated with DraftKings odds every 5 minutes, so you can see changes in all the action. Find out where the public's betting based on the number of tickets and where the money doesn't match the public opinion. And it's not just for the games today, but future events by date as well. Take advantage, though. It's a limited time offer. VSiN.com/splits is how you can claim your free 2-week access to VSiN's betting splits.
Do you disagree with these takes?
No way.
No way.
Or do you approve?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt in my mind.
No diggity, no doubt. It's time to ask Michael Lombardi, no way or no doubt.
Now, you've already largely answered this question today, Michael, but I like it when you yell, so I'm going to throw it in here one more time. No way or no doubt, Michael. The 76ers are the rightful series favorites against the Knicks.
No way. We stop. When is this Joel Embiid Houdini-like love affair going to end? I mean, when are we going to realize that the playoffs are conditioning? You got to play. You got to stay healthy. You got to stay off the ground. Perhaps maybe try that. Look, he's a fabulous player, and he makes their team so much better. But, and this is a huge but. This isn't a little but. This is a big but, Stormy. There's no dependability. There's no reliability. And because they're going to have to cut down his minutes, I mean, the idiot Paul Reed over here says, well, thank God we're playing the Knicks. Like, oh, okay, that really is going to help your cause. That really, really is a good idea to say something stupid like that when you're going against a team that won over 50 games or 50 games, they haven't really had that home court advantage in the past like they're going to now. I mean, this is hard, and it takes mental fortitude. It takes mental toughness, all those things that under the Josh Harris administration, as him as the owner, this franchise has failed to have.
You will appreciate at least that the betting market is on the move. The 76ers opened a minus 160 favorite, and it has been bet down significantly just to minus 115. And also just real quickly, because I'm a 12-year-old boy sometimes put in a 30-year-old female's body, because when you said it's a big butt, I had to laugh. Just a big butt. Quarterbacks are the talk of the town when it comes to the NFL draft, Michael. For Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May to go 1, 2, 3 in that exact order is an odds-on minus 145 favorite. So, no way or no doubt, there is consensus across the league on the top quarterback rankings for the 2024 draft.
No way, Stormy. There is no consensus. I'm not sure you could get consensus on regular Diet Coke or the new version of Diet. Like, there's just no way consensus happens in the NFL. Now, I know they want collaboration. That's the big word of the NFL. But consensus amongst teams is really challenging. I do think, though, in really talking to a bunch of teams and watching, I think there are 4 quarterbacks that have first-round grades put on them. And I think McCarthy is in that group. However, after that, I think it gets sketchy. It gets, does someone trade up? Does someone trade back? Does someone do something else? Where's Michael Penix? But in terms of the consensus, today Elliott Wolf came out and said that the 3rd pick's up for sale. Okay, that makes sense. Everybody advertises their picks without having to pay a premium for the billboard. That being said, if Drake May's there, would he take him? Or is he saying that to tell Joe Shane, come get the pick if you want Drake May? Who knows? Because I think the order is completely different. I do think most people have 1 and 2 down where they think. I think it's Williams and Daniels. After that, it's a crapshoot.
Well, and to your point, and what we talked about yesterday with some comments from Bill Belichick, that everybody's board across the league is different. What you have and what the other teams have, every single one is going to be different, and that is included at the top as well. Speaking of Bill Belichick, Michael, Seth Wickersham, who you spoke to this past week for the article that ended up coming out yesterday on ESPN, he said on 98.5 The Sports Hub, he doesn't believe Bill Belichick will coach in the NFL again. No way or no doubt, Bill will be a head coach in the NFL as soon as next season.
Well, I'm hoping there is no doubt he will be. But I do think that because of age and because of the way the league is trending in terms of collaboration and people wanting this. But look, what we say here when there have been no losses is really different than what we'll say in in October, November next year when there are losses. Fear does the work of reason. So I'm going to say no doubt he'll coach, because I truly believe, as Winston Churchill said in 1940 when he became the prime minister, the reason he got the job was fear did the work of reason. I believe that.
You mentioned Elliott Wolf and that number 3 pick potentially being up for grabs. There's a lot of teams that we've been talking about as potential draft day trade candidates. No way or no doubt there will be more than 6.5 draft day trades come Thursday.
Oh, boy, that's a lot. Yeah, I think so. Because of the sparsity of the defensive board, I do think there could be an over here. Yeah, I think there is a no doubt it could happen. Because, Stormy, you want to get, like, you're Philadelphia, right? You look at Philly's depth chart. Philly can masquerade all the things they want to masquerade about. We're not doing this. We're not doing that yet. They need a corner badly. Both their corners are over 30 years old. Both of them can't play man-to-man anymore. What are they going to do? They just brought in Vic Fangio, who's not quiet. He's expressing, I'm sure, we better get some corners. And if you're Howie Roseman and you've done all these signings, right, and you've signed all these players in free agency for good deals, again, good deal, but giving you really good depth. Like, how many of your draft picks are going to make the team? Like, wouldn't you be better for a laser target to get the corner that you want than to sit around? So I think there's a lot of mentality with that, right? I think that's where it goes. And Philly's got 22, 50, 53. They have 2 second-round picks, albeit low. They could move up from 22 to get to 13 and get the corner that they want if he slips. I think it's easy. And so I think that's the methodology that'll happen and why I think we'll see over 6.5 trades.
So with that thought in mind, because you're talking about a team that's outside of the top 10, where all of the talk about the bulk of trades has been who's going to trade up to get a quarterback. No way or no doubt, teams are more likely to trade into the end of the round than they are to trade up into the top 10.
I think the end of the round has real trade appeal to it. Because once again, right, would you rather, if you're Denver and all you have is one quarterback on your roster, you have to get one. And so what you're trying to do is figure out, how do I maximize this, right? Like I said this before the draft when the Browns picked Baker Mayfield. I would have traded down from Baker. I would have picked Bradley Chubb and Quentin Nelson, got 2 really good players, and then traded back into the first to get Lamar. Because he was slipping and everybody knew it. And he sat in that green room, and Steve Bisciotti, the owner of the Baltimore Ravens, went in there and said, guys, let's get this guy. Let's take this guy. And they did, and it saved their franchise. This is why owners make a difference. Steve did that. John York Sr. goes to Kyle and tells him, look, if you really have a 4th-round grade on Brock Purdy, why are you wasting anybody's time? Just pick him in the 7th round. It saved their franchise. That advice, being logical or at least seeing the light, I think that's what will happen in the bottom of the first.
No question about it. The Lakers playing the Nuggets has not been a good proposition for Los Angeles in recent history. They've lost 8 straight, including getting swept in the Western Conference Final last year. No way or no doubt the Lakers will fare better this time around against the Nuggets than they did last season.
No way. Look, one thing about the NBA, the longer you play against teams, there's adjustments within games, but sometimes it just comes down to who's got the better team, right? And who has the ability. Will they sweep them? If that's the no doubt they'll sweep, I would say no way they get swept. I think the Lakers will win one, but I don't think the Lakers are going to win the series. I just think it's too hard.
Nuggets are minus 310 in the series. Lakers plus 250. Denver for the sweep, 5-1. If you think the Lakers get one, plus 285 for Denver to win, 4-1. Patrick Mahomes said recently he doesn't feel like he's anywhere near GOAT status, Michael. Got a long way to go still in his career. No way or no doubt Mahomes is right. He's nowhere near GOAT yet.
Well, no, look, he's chasing Brady. When Brady's got 7 and you got 3. So how do you argue with his logic? And I love his logic. Unlike Paul Reed's stupid statement about the 76ers, this statement is what you love. You love somebody who has an appetite for more, who wants to do more things, who's not content. This is what's going to drive the Chiefs. And he knows making this statement is really not about him. Mm-hmm. He's sending a message to his team that, we won last year, but we're going to have to come back and play even better next year. He's doing that. He's not doing this. He is not doing this just to protect him or promote himself. He's doing this to promote his team.
In 6 seasons as the Chiefs' full-time starting quarterback, 3 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 league MVPs, and led the passing yards once and passing touchdowns twice. 28 years old, so he's certainly on his trajectory if he can maintain this type of greatness. But there is still a GOAT out there that he's got to chase. We'll be right back on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Stormy Buonantony, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Don't miss out on any of the NBA playoff action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournaments that roll on through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered with same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and more. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code VSiN. New customers that do can bet $5 and win $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's code VSiN, VSIN, only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Pressing? Yes, I say it's pressing.
This is Palms Pressing 3.
My mother told me never to answer a question with a question.
Sir, my client has answered every question asked by this committee with the utmost sincerity.
I do love the ambiance, the music. Let's go. Palms pressing 3. Mike, what you got?
First segment about Washington and marrying the quarterback to the offensive system and play caller. What's the best advice you can give to any one particular team heading into this year's draft regarding their first pick? So a specific bit of advice for a specific team.
The Chicago Bears, forget the quarterback. You got the 9th pick overall, get a really good defensive lineman. Because if you're going to have any success next year in the Matt Eberflus system, you're going to have to get it. And this is a draft that doesn't have a lot of those 3 techniques like last year that can rush from the inside. So if you can get one of those 3 and there's really only one, really, at the end of the day, there's really just the Murphy kid from Texas. If you can get him, then you better take him. There's always going to be edges that you can find, but it's hard to find 300-pound men that can rush the passer. So that would be one advice. And then if I were to give Howie Roseman advice, I would say, Howie, look, you've signed so many guys that have veteran qualities to them. You're a veteran team. You can find later round picks. Go get the best corner you can get. Be as aggressive to get the corner that you want as you were aggressive with getting Jalen Smith. Because you're not going to hold up in Vic Fangio's scheme if you think you're going to play with Bradbury in a man-to-man and with Slay. Now, I know you're counting on your defensive front to win, but I think that. And then Dallas, I think this is the most critical draft for Dallas. They've got to find an offensive lineman that could be plug and play, at left tackle preferably.
Do you think he'll still be available to the Bears at 9, or do you think Atlanta takes him at 8?
No, Atlanta's probably, Atlanta's probably thinking they're going to take an edge. Although with Raheem Morrison there, I think he could be in play there. He's really a good player. He's under the radar here because nobody talks about him. Because what happens in the mocks, Mike, is everybody just keeps using the same names over and over and over again. They mess up the order a little bit. Oh, Adunze's going here and this guy's – but nobody talks about – this defensive draft has really about 8 to 9 players that have first-round grades on them. Now, some guys have lower first-round grades, which really are second-round grades. So if you have a chance to get that kind of guy, whether you're in a team, and most of these teams need defensive help. The Raiders need corners. All these teams need defensive help. So I think it would behoove you. Everybody wants to trade up to get the quarterback and trade up to get the receiver. See, the receiver board is a little bit skewed because once you get past Harrison, Neighbors, and, you get past those 2 guys, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit of an iffy, and then you get a Dunze who's going to go early. Those 3, and then now it becomes, is Brian Thomas healthy enough? What's his medical, right? Off the field. Then you get into those 2 Texas kids. Yeah, are they going to come in and plug and play? They're not number 1 receivers. That's when it gets a little hairy.
Michael, really quickly, because Mike still has 2 more questions in Palms Pressing 3. As far as the corner position goes, there's been a lot of steam lately on Terrion Arnold from Alabama, but I've always been of the firm belief it was going to be Quinyon Mitchell as the first corner off the board. Have you heard anything there?
Here's what I would say. I think sometimes you have to watch the tape and see what the team does to define the player. Everybody has Alabama's 2 corners going in the first round. Nick Saban, for one of the few times in his coaching career, didn't play much man-to-man last year. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Tells you maybe Nick doesn't think they're really good man-to-man players. I think Mitchell is a man-to-man player.
Okay. All right, Michael, question 2. How important is the division that a team plays in how that team prepares for and executes the draft?
Oh, I think it's critical. I think it's a tenet of Al Davis behavior. You can't get to the playoffs if you don't win your division. You can get there on a wild card, but you can't win. You're not going anywhere if you can't win your division. And so you've got to be able to match up. You've got to be able to say, how can we defeat this player? Who can we bring in that can cause problems? What do we have to do to beat Team Y? I think it's all about that. And I think everybody tends to focus on the league. But you got to win your division. How do we what's the way to beat Kansas City? If you're, and I'm sure Jim Harbaugh is saying the way to beat Kansas City is to be really good in the offensive and defensive fronts. All right, that's how you got a chance to beat them. We're not going to outskill them. We're not going to out quarterback them. We got to find a way to win the game. And so I think that's really important. I think it's probably the biggest criteria in team building. And if you don't do that, if you're not aware of it, I always had a board in my office, Mike, that had every position in the division we played and graded by how we rank. Who has the best free safety? Who has the best? And to see that, Sparky Anderson did that years ago for the Cincinnati Reds. He always compared his team to the other teams in his division. And so we use that logic.
All right, the final question is about the Jonte Porter situation in the NBA, and obviously this has been the headlines with the lifetime ban, the collusion with the bookies, his own betting and that. A couple-part question here, Michael. One, what are the chances that this same situation could happen in the NFL, given that the NBA is a league run by the players of the NFL is not? And number two, what should Roger Goodell and the owners do to try to safeguard that it never happens in the NFL?
I don't see it ever happening in the NFL because unless the quarterback's controlling it, right? Because it's hard to get the ball. It's hard to have a prop bet with a guy. Now, even if the game plan, Mike, let's just hypothetically say the game plan is geared towards player Y getting the ball a bunch, okay? Got that. All right, so player Y goes and bets his prop bet because he knows he's going to get the ball a bunch. Well, the game starts and all of a sudden he can't get him the ball. It's really hard. It's really challenging. So I think it isn't. But I think the beautiful thing, and Stormy did this in Stormfront, is the combination between the leagues and the books working together to see that something that looks out of the realm, out of the ordinary, right? It's like when the Great Britain had that postal scandal, right? Something was out of the ordinary. And when you see that, immediately you recognize and you move forward to change. I think that's something the league is going to constantly do. And if the players are stupid enough, like Porter, to be willing to forego a career over really not a lot of money, then that's really not being very smart.
The books communicating with the league, the books communicating with each other. Matt Holt and U.S. Integrity have a role in this. I think one of their great things that they do in conjunction with, reporting where there's odd betting patterns is investigation of some of these officials, Michael, especially in these smaller conferences, smaller divisions where they don't make much money and don't have a high profile and that. You see in South America, a tennis chair umpire was just suspended for 7 years for point shaving in tennis matches, and he was betting on the matches.
Only 7?
That's what Mitch said. Why not
yeah,
lifetime? But anyhow, okay. Right. So the more the communication is, the more you weed these things out. If you're not communicating, then the story just wouldn't get reported. Also, I do have to say, on an obscure player taking a bet to win over $1 million with 3 correlated bets in a same game parlay seems foolhardy to me as well.
Well, yeah, I think to me. And that's where and look, let's face it, Mike, there's a lot of methodology to get this thing where you guys know when something looks fishy too immediately. I mean, and the league can too. As for the NFL officials, they're graded with a fine-tooth comb. And I know I find that hard to believe because Scott Novak, how he comes back every year, I have no idea. But they're graded with it's not him, it's all the crew. And I think that scrutiny is good for the league. It doesn't always translate in getting good officiated games, but it's good for this part of the NFL game.
And Mike, what you said about that, $80,000 parlay to win $1 million over, you were just talking about the NFL draft props, and you were like, yeah, we have $500 limits here. How are you getting down that type of money? No shock at all. It was a paused or frozen bet, whatever you want to call it, didn't go through because you're betting on an obscure player at that type of number?
So they accepted the bet. I don't know who the book is or what state, but they accepted the bet. Now they have to apply to the Gaming Commission to not pay that bet, right, to negate the bet. And, of course, now the NBA statement is grounds enough for that to happen.
With the investigation coming through the way it is. Fascinating. Really appreciate your time, Mike Palm.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Michael.
Have a great day.
Mike. Thank you.
Good luck with your bets today. See you tomorrow.